My name is Mark Rambow. I'm the president of the Sturgis and Meade County Historical Society. And we have undertaken, along with the Arts Council, the task of this time capsule that was rediscovered or uncovered, or however you want to say it. We are going to be presenting today what all is entailed in the original 1894 time capsule, some of the items that were added in the 1960s, and what our plans are moving ahead with the time capsule. So before we get started, I want to bring Dee Dee up from the Arts Council. She wanted to do something real quick here. You bet. Where's the mic?
Am I on? Yes, I am. We had kind of a "you're kidding" moment this week. I don't know if all of you know, I worked at First Interstate Bank for quite a few years. And one of my things that I used the bank for was the vault, and I hid things that belonged to the Arts Council in the vault because they were very important and I didn't want them to be stolen or whatever. So they were very carefully watched over in the vault. Well, I retired 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and I got a call from Mary Weber, who works at the bank, and she said, I've been going through the vault, and I found some stuff that I think might belong to the Arts Council. And I went, oh my gosh. I forgot. Yes. So anyway, what was there, and this is actually, in 2025, we will be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Colonel Sturgis sculpture that is out on the east end of town, coming in on Highway 34. That was when Ed Halofka sculpted and we placed that piece out there. And if you haven't seen it, drive out and take a look at it because it's beautiful. It's Colonel Sturgis, who was a very important part of Fort Meade and, of course, Sturgis. And that's why we are Sturgis. But along with the finds that we had, there was one maquette down there of that piece. And there are also, and I should take this out. Mark, could you take that out for me? We have several of these coins that were also made at the time of the sculpture. And on one side is a design of the sculpture, and on the other side it says Sturgis Area Arts Council, year 2000, Colonel Samuel Sturgis. And it's really nice. And that's going to go in the time capsule. We're so excited. So I just wanted to let you know that, and we're going to celebrate Colonel Sturgis and 25 years of letting people into town. So look forward to that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I'll hand this off to, there's Ross. He's our microphone man. That's all right. All right. Thank you. That's going to be great. That's a perfect kind of item to include in the time capsule. And we're going to be looking for concise, small items that we can put in that represent our community and that sort of thing. And we'll be talking about that in the presentation. Before we get any further, though, I do want to thank some people. I want to thank Chris and Lee from the library here. Not only are they real generous with this room and allowing us to hold these kind of events, but they're also the co-sponsors of our genealogy work group and help us out with that. So we've had some great meetings, and we have more to come with that. I want to thank, of course, everybody with the Arts Council, everybody with the Historical Society, and Kevin Forrester, because Kevin's the one that kind of got all this rolling with his desire to clean the model of the old courthouse. And you'll see a little bit. We have a little video we're going to start with here. Oh, yeah. Let me get you the mic. There we go. You got that?
I'll have it till I don't. I don't know what was it. Probably December. I got a hold of Kevin and thought we should maybe do something with this. And just 2 weeks ago, we were scanning things, and I was wondering what in the heck I got myself into. or well, us into. But Mark kind of already. I was going to thank the committee and everything, but I think I think you missed Chris.
Yeah.
Chris is on our committee, and Chris and Ross and Mark and I have been on the committee to put this together. And this is a short. I went to the 2016 program that we did, and I just took about 8 minutes out of it and made a little bit of clip. And in the beginning of this, we got a special guest that's going to be, and I thought maybe I should have to have Kleenexes in here, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see. I think that's all I had. But yeah, so this is an 8-minute clip from the program in 2016. So go ahead.
Thank you.
We welcome you again on behalf of the Arts Council and on behalf of the library. And remember always to thank them. They set up the chairs, they take down the chairs, they make the coffee, and they just help us. And this is our home away from home. So thank you, library. And if you get a chance to say thanks, you do the same too.
Well, my partner in crime today is Kevin Forrester. He's the building supervisor for Meade County. And he's going to explain this schematic, and he's going to explain some of the model. And Kevin has a pretty good background with the new courthouse, and he takes an interest in the old courthouse. And we had a surprise today. We can't really tell you what it is, and I can't. I'm sorry, it's a surprise. Sure. All I can tell you is that it was discovered within the last 12 hours in preparation for this, and we are just simply not prepared to really even tell you what it is. All I can tell you, I was a history major. I love history. As a history major and somebody who's interested in, it was an incredibly exciting find. Incredibly. So we hope that perhaps down the road, we'll have an opportunity to come back and explain a little bit more. But for right now, it's a secret.
I'll sign you up as soon as you're ready.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting as we started digging through some of the old items that have been in the vaults in various places of the courthouse. A lot of these items actually were discovered as we made a move of the administrative offices from the courthouse. You know, everybody was in one building until about 6 years ago when the county completed the remodel, the refurbishing of the Erskine School building, and the offices had to do maybe more housekeeping, if you will, than they had done previously. We had to get the items moved from point A to point B, and in the process, we discovered a couple of things. And of course, we have the model here that's been in the lobby of the courthouse as long as I can remember myself. The very first time that I ever took it out of the case, and the reason I chose to take it out of the case is because it was kind of dusty and the inside of the case was a little, so it seemed like it was a good time to take a look at it. This thing is solid wood. I mean, it weighs about 30 pounds. And so just, somebody put quite a lot of time into it.
Who made it?
I do not know that just yet.
But the discovery may reveal that.
In the Erskine building, there's an amazing arch that is part of the old bell tower. So if you go to the modern commissioner's meeting room, you don't see it. It's up above the ceiling. It was the sign of the times. We didn't have the ability to get this nice big piece of iron to make a header to go over an opening. They hand fit all the stone pieces and made this arch. It wasn't an architectural detail. It was functional and 100% hidden. And we just couldn't figure out a way that would work to expose it at this point. This building, the Erskine building, is cool, but it didn't match the architecture of our original courthouse.
Could you just point out the various offices and such on here, and when the folks
Sure.
come up here, they'll be able to figure it themselves here.
We'll start in the basement, and the right-hand side here is where the jail cells are, and there's actually a restroom in the basement, but it's clear over here in the opposite corner. And of course, that's not how it is today. I mean, today we have a toilet in every cell. All the county offices were on the main floor. Like I say, I apologize, I'm struggling with
Here, I can
um,
This is, that's the sheriff.
this is the register of deeds, isn't it?
Yep, that's the auditor. There's the superintendent, and there's the surveyor. They are different
Yeah,
offices.
that's an interesting piece. The superintendent of schools was, you know, in the courthouse, and we still have records, you know, in the vaults from that timeline. The second floor was where all the judicial things were, and that's where there was one large courtroom and several smaller hearing rooms, and they're labeled often as jury rooms. So we must have really been able to be efficient to use one courtroom and have several jury rooms running at the same time.
This was a cool article that I found. It's by William Grams, and it describes how he built this and the building of the foundation of it, and what was wrong with it. He was kind of ticked at the architect. It's a cool article because he basically describes sort of the problems he had. I'll just point out a few of them. So it was 1893 and 1894 is at the time I built the courthouse. We got out nearly all the lumber and all. Some of the latter was not any too dry, as can be found to this day. We got the lumber to make the doors and windows for the courthouse. It was some of the very best that grows. Still then, not so far away. It was well seasoned, as can be seen in the courthouse now. The courthouse was the largest in size of all my construction and the smallest in figures of money.
Wow.
The foundation for the courthouse was built years before, donated by the city of Sturgis to secure the county seat. That's an interesting little tidbit. Whalen and Hill did the work, not any too good. In the first place, though, there was an entirely different structure planned then built on the said foundation. At any rate, there was quite a lot of settling and cracking of the stones caused by settling of the insufficient foundation, but more or less blamed on me as contractor. This caused me quite a bit of worry, but by and by the settling and cracking went no further, and it is now no worse than 30 years ago. Which may explain why they tore it down, and the lady that you were talking about, that, you know, said they tore it down because of the cracks. That seems to be part of the, you know, the history of that. The biggest trouble came about through the architect's mistake. Mr. Gilbreth from Deadwood drew the plan as the building now stands. The outer basement walls were complete with straight stone caps over the windows. The caps, however, were not suitable, and the ones to be seen now put in place. It can be seen that all the caps, but the arched ones, are straight in the upper structure. But the arched stones over the basement windows are wedge-shaped, not in harmony with the rest of the work whatsoever. Why he placed them that way, I have never been able to figure out. This turned out to be the biggest mistake that could be made in this case. The trimming stone, as can be seen, is dark red or brown. This stone comes from Hot Springs Quarry. It has a tendency to lengthen out in hot weather, like iron, much more so than any other stone that I know of, and streaks also more in cold weather, and let the caps loose and sag down. Next summer, it would push out again and crack some other stone, and cold weather sag again. It has done so for years. Now it seems it all hangs out there. And then here's how he follows this up. Somehow, architects are not blamed. The contractor catches it. Never mind that now. It's all over. I saw this man years after on the Klondike Trail.
All right. So that was a great synopsis. Thank you, Richard, for editing that down. That was the original History at High Noon that was held in 2016. And that was what led to, for some reason, there we go. That's what led to the cleaning of the model of the old courthouse that was in the lobby at the courthouse we have today. And Kevin finding there was a little compartment underneath it that held these items that were in the original 1894 time capsule. Did you have anything to add to any of that, Kevin, or are you good? All right. You did most of it anyway. You put it all together originally. So just a brief history of what we're looking at here. Meade County was formed in 1889, just a few months before we became a state. It was separated from Lawrence County. Ironically, Sturgis had been trying to separate from Lawrence County for a decade at that point. They had been trying to section off the eastern part of the county and make their own county. And Deadwood had fought it and fought it and fought it. And they actually got the legislature to pass the division of the county in 1887. But Deadwood was really tight with the governor at the time, the territorial governor, and he put it in his pocket. And so people started referring, some people in Sturgis started referring to us as Meade County as early as 1887, but it wasn't until 1889 that the actual division occurred. Sturgis was then selected as a county seat over Tilford. There was a big brouhaha, but as it turns out, there's a lot more people in Sturgis than there are in Tilford. So when the vote came, it was pretty overwhelming. 1894 is when I have completion there, and that's not quite correct. The groundbreaking and the stone laying of the foundation occurred for the courthouse, as described in the letter that was just read in the video. And that's when they also interned the time capsule. So a lot of the things we're going to be talking about focus between 1889 and 1894. In 1899, they added 2 more counties, and that's the part of Meade County that sticks clear up and includes Faith and everything. So 10 years after we were originally formed, Meade County doubled in size, and it's the shape that it is today. In 1964, they had the groundbreaking for the new courthouse. And from everything we can tell, there wasn't a lot of thought put into ceremony and time capsules and all of those sort of things. They found the old time capsule. It was mentioned that they had found it, and we did find that some of the items in it were photographed and stuff, but there wasn't a ceremony to reinter it or anything like that. I don't know how it got, I don't think anybody knows how it got in the base of that model. Somebody had responsibility for it, and they put it in there to keep it safe. And there were a few other items that it looked like they had been adding over the years, whoever it was that knew it was there. There were some newspapers from like the 72 flood and that sort of thing in there as well. 1966 is probably the earliest time that it could have been placed in that model. That's when they actually opened and dedicated the new courthouse. 2016, the time capsule was discovered when they were getting ready for their History at High Noon program. And we also, I believe it was November 2016, held a program at the courthouse where we went through all the items, and we held them underneath an overhead projector that was showing everybody in the crowd what was in the time capsule, but we're going to be going through that here in a minute. And then 2024, the reinterment of the time capsule on the 135th anniversary of the county and 130th anniversary of the building of the courthouse. So we have the program here of the day, June 18th, 1894. I just ran upstairs and looked in the newspaper for right after this event, and the Sturgis Record claimed there were 20,000 people there. Now, it did say that there were more conservative types that would put that number much lower. So I think they were doing that a little tongue-in-cheek, but it was a big event. It was huge. They had all kinds of dignitaries from the state that were there. They had a huge convention going on of Masonic people in Deadwood from all over the state, and a lot of those folks came down and were part of this. So you'll see a heavy imprint of Masonic activities and stuff on the dedication. They laid the cornerstone, they had a band, they had a parade, they had all kinds of stuff. Dignitaries from Fort Meade were there, you name it. So it was a big deal. I did go into newspapers.com yesterday and look at the old Rapid City Journals from right after the building of the new courthouse when they dedicated that. And there were maybe 25, 30 people there. And they could list them by name, who was there. And good half of them were all county officials and stuff. So much different turnout for that dedication. These were the items that were included in the time capsule and then were listed in inside the time capsule. A couple of these I cannot find in there. So I'm thinking that some of it might have disappeared in 1964. There's a couple of items that I don't know, maybe they just never made it into the time capsule. And then this is the 1964 groundbreaking, and you'll probably see some familiar names there. Mayor Sturgis and the county commissioners, pastor of the Grace Lutheran Church, a lot of different people that were involved at the time. And I'm kind of clicking through these quickly, so if you have questions, let me know. I want to make sure we get through all this so we have some discussion time at the end. These were the actual individuals that were present at the groundbreaking, and you can see it goes down to about the middle with John Egger, the sheriff, and Clyde, I can't see the name from here, McHugh, the patrolman. And everybody after that then are just community members, everybody above it. So the top half of the list are all county officials, city officials, that sort of thing. One of the things we found in the box with all the items from the time capsule are the 1889 election returns. They were actually given to the county in 1966 for the dedication of the new courthouse by Lawrence County. They were still holding those since it was part of Lawrence County at the time. And the poll books, and I'll be showing images of them here, must have been one of the items that then got placed in the 1960s by whoever it was that was kind of keeping track of everything. But there was a vote on holding a constitutional convention in Sioux Falls, because that's the year we ended up getting statehood, and then who the delegates were going to be for that constitutional convention. This is the note that was with it from the clerk of courts in Lawrence County, and that they were held from 1889 until August 6, 1966, when the new Meade County Courthouse held open house. And these are what the poll books look like. This is the Sturgis poll book. It's easily the largest by the number of people voting and stuff. There were 250 voters listed in there. Remember, this was just men at that time voting, so that's a pretty good turnout for a special election, I think. And what is contained in each of these poll books, and I'm not going to show this for each of them, this is a sample, but it has a page that shows all the documentation, who the polling officials are, where it's being held, that sort of thing. Then there's actually pages that list all of the voters. And then there's a tally sheet where it lists the tally on each issue as they're reading off the ballots. And then there's an official sheet at the end too, where they're signing, yes, this is a accurate count, and so on. The other poll books that are included in that are the Upper Alkali Precinct, which was held at the house of James Forbes. They had 17 voters. The Lower Alkali Precinct, house of Peter McDonald, they had 7 voters. You can see why the 250 in Sturgis made a difference. Spring Creek Precinct, and it didn't say where the actual polling place was in the book, but they had 29 voters. Black Hawk Precinct, 39 voters. Bear Butte Precinct at the residence of William Myers, 13 voters. Spring Valley Precinct at Socorro Schoolhouse, 16 voters. And the Tilford Precinct at John A. Case's store, and they had 70 voters, which again might give you some idea of why the county seat vote turned out the way it did earlier than that. This is what the actual time capsule looked like from 1894. It's a metal box, had a lid on top of it. I have it here, but we decided to keep it. We have to put on gloves and everything to handle everything. We want to make sure we're doing it properly, and everything's included in the slideshow for the most part. So we should be good to go with this. But this is what it looks like. All the items are folded small, or little business cards and stuff, and they're all placed in the metal box. And you can see where it was concreted into the cornerstone. It included a picture of Grover Cleveland, the President of the United States at the time. It was just a little tiny picture, though, so it wasn't like a huge thing. Then they had a lot of these community reports. This is a report from the Masons. This is actually a copy of their report that they sent to the state office or state organization. And it lists some of the members, it lists the dues that they charged, how many members they had, what their bank balance was, that sort of thing. And that's included in here. Like I said, there's a lot of Masonic stuff and a lot of Masonic representatives that were there. There was a full book of the Constitution and bylaws of the Masons. I didn't copy the whole book or put it on the slideshow. This is one of the community reports from the city auditor, who was George Webster, and it kind of just talks about who the members, aldermen were, who the organizers were of the courthouse plans, and then it talks about who's the justice of the peace and the police and all those things. There's some really interesting letters in here. Meade County Auditor William Bradley gives a really brief history of the county, which of course was not very old yet at that point. So it just talks about it was formed in 1889 and so on. And it talks about who the commissioners are and the different county officers. This was included, and we didn't have a Chamber of Commerce yet at that point, but I'm sure that this was made by the business club in town. There did have a business club starting in about the mid-1880s, and this was just an advertising piece that they could hand out to people that wanted information. And you can see some of the great advertising that's included on the key city of the Black Hills. And this is another page of it. And this is the inside of it. And then folded in the exact same size and everything is a map of Sturgis. So I'm assuming that this was probably part of that same advertising piece that the business club put together. And this map is from 1887, near as I can tell from reading the dialogue about Sturgis. And that was included then in the time capsule. And you can see there's some really neat, things to point out. The fairgrounds is listed right as where it is as a racetrack. You can see the train line coming through, and that just got here in 1887. So that is a projection yet at that point when they made this of where the actual train would go, although they had it laid out by that time and knew where it would be going. This is the final bid for the courthouse. It breaks down the financials of each subcontractor and that sort of thing, who's doing the windows, and we should look at that guy because apparently he didn't do a very good job. You can see here the total price is $3,975.48 for building the courthouse. This is the Justice of the Peace being sworn in, James P. Smith, and it goes through and says he's going to abide by the laws of the territory and so on, and it's signed, and then there's a notary public signed and everything. Constitution of the Sturgis Hose Company. That's the front and back. And then the inside shows, this is really kind of cool. It shows the different signals. So if you hear the bell ringing, if it's 2 taps, that's the hose being called out. 2 and 2 are the hook and ladder are supposed to come and meet, because those are all for meetings. And then if you're going into service, the engine whistle down here. And there's 1 blast and 2 blasts, 3 blasts. And I don't know what get the heck out of the way, what that meant, but I'm sure that was just 1 long blast probably. Lantern signals, that kind of thing. So it's kind of cool. You get a sense of what it was like if that fire engine was coming down the road at you. The Constitution was included in there and bylaws. I didn't include all of it in the presentation, but the back page is interesting because it lists the roster of all the members of the fire station in 1889, late December 1889. So there's some familiar names on there. For people who have studied early history of Sturgis, there's a lot of the city founders and stuff are included there. Sturgis Board of Education report. It really just lists who the members and officers are of the Board of Education, and then it lists the names of the teachers on there. And there's 3, there's a principal, and then there's 3 teachers. It looks like it's Miss, I have to get in the right angle here. Miss Susie Bird, Miss Carrie Phillips, and Miss Alice Cook were the teachers in 1894. Then there were reports from each of the, well, there were supposed to be 4 reports from the churches. There's 3 of them included. This one's the history of the Methodist Church, and I know Ross was taking a close look at that and interested in the name that was on the letter, W.D. Atwater. I believe he was the first pastor of your church in town here. So there was also a report then from the Episcopal Church, and it's very brief. It just says, this is where it is, this is who's on our council, and so on. And then there's another that's a little more lengthy. That's the history of the Presbyterian Church, and that has 2 front and back pages, 4 pages. And then there's this report from St. Martin's Academy, but it just says that, you know, these nuns came on this date and they started St. Martin's Academy, but it says at the very beginning, within this cornerstone, the new courthouse, is contained an account of the date of building of St. Martin's Academy. But there is no other account, it's just this. And then there, excuse me, then there was also supposed to be a report from what was then St. Aloysius Church, the Catholic Church, and that's not in there either. So I'm wondering if somebody who helped open this didn't say, oh, the church should have this, you know, and like give it to somebody, because they're not there. So, and then there's copies of the most recent newspapers in the community. Sturgis Advertiser, the Sturgis Weekly Record, and the Deadwood Weekly Independent. And I'm guessing the other Deadwood papers weren't included because they were vicious about Sturgis breaking off and forming their own county. Meade County was something they did not want at any cost. So one of the ways they finally got it achieved is they had the legislature move the district court from Deadwood to Rapid City. And they were able then to stop the district court from blocking any activity. A medal from the Grand Army of the Republic. For those who aren't familiar, the GAR was a group of Union veterans from the Civil War, and we had a very active chapter here. The Knights of Pythias was another society, fraternal society. That ribbon was in there. And then there's some official seals here that are for different businesses in town. I think one of them's from a notary public and that sort of thing. And they're listed in the thing, official seals from, you know, and they're listed in that list of items. And then there's a lot of business cards. A lot of the businesses in town wanted to represent themselves. The very top one is kind of J.C. McMillan, who was a very early settler in town and a real character in town. You can see on the back of his card, he wrote, orders booked for the spring of 1994. So 100 years later, he had orders ready to go. Olaf Hellwig, who held a lot of different offices in town. He was a notary public. He was the one of the county officials. He had businesses in town. And for some reason on the back of his, and I haven't been able to find out what this means, it says, The Romance of Meade County Courthouse, September 25th, 1893, Miss Caroline Elizabeth Stoley, and there's a New York address and her birth date and everything. I don't know what that means, so I'm going to be digging into that one to find out what the romance of the Meade County Courthouse means. Then you'll find there are a lot of business cards that have names crossed out. Most of them are Olaf Hellwig's cards. He must have had a pocket full of them. And people that didn't have a card but were supposed to put something into the time capsule would cross out the name of the person and then write their information on the back. So there's some Masonic ones. There's Mr. Dowley on the bottom, who runs the Sturgis Advertiser, and he had a medal pinned to his. These are some more, mostly Masonic ones, and you'll see that Olaf Hellwig's card was used in one of those cases. But it was Masonic people who were here for that convention and came down to the groundbreaking. Olaf Helwig wrote some information about himself on the back of one of them. And then there's also a couple more from the Masonic temple and so on. The bottom one here, John Scollard, was one of the very first people to move into town. He ran the Sheridan House, which is roughly in the center part of the block where, where Tom's Teas and stuff is right now. Yep. Lushbot Hardware was there in that building. And that was where the Sheridan House was. It was called that for years. And then in the mid to late 1890s, he changed it to the Hotel Scollard, which is his name. And then he ended up selling it around 1900, and he moved to California. Let's see, more businessmen and Masonic ones. You can see there's people from all over. Iroquois, South Dakota. There's some in here from Illinois and stuff. There's Aberdeen. It was a big to-do. They had a huge crowd there. This one over here, Nichols Photography Studio. That was the little strip on the bottom of the old photograph cards where that said the name of the photographers. They cut that off and he stuck it in there as his card. I'm sure he didn't have a business card per se. Jacob Keffler Dry Goods. Just some of these ones are mostly, you'll see the two on the left, those are cut off the top of an invoice. So they have a printed invoice. They didn't have a card, so they just cut the top section off of their invoice and used that. Same with all of these. The one over there just says a name. It says, I think, Orville Brothers. This one's actually a receipt that he put in there. It was selling somebody some stuff, and he just used that as his business card. This one was kind of interesting. Treber and Company. They were a distributor of alcoholic beverages, and they included this invoice for Anheuser-Busch that was shipped in on the railroad. 125 cases of 125 boxes of bottled beer, 110 quarter something. I can't read it all, but why that's in there, I don't know. And there's a lot of these business cards, so I tried to consolidate them as best I could and put multiples on each page. But it is representative of the community at the time. We had a lot of business going on. W.E. Jones. These two were included in this envelope on the top left. Just says cards of N.L. Witcher and his granddaughter. So it's N.L. Witcher and Miss Ruth J. Dowley. And then this must have been added later. It's the architect drawing of the new courthouse. It's just a little drawing about this big. And that was pretty much everything that was included. There were a couple flags that we got from the county. We're figuring out what to do with them. They were used in the ceremony for the dedication in 1964 or 66. I'll have to look at them and see which one. So now we're kind of to the point where we've got to figure out, okay, we're going to put all this together. We want to put all the stuff back that was in the original time capsule. We want to include the items that were added in 1960s. But what do we do from here? What kind of items are we adding that represent our recent history and our community today? So that's going to be the next step. We have a committee formed, as was mentioned, myself, Ross Lamphere, Chris Hubbard, Richard Moeller. Kevin's been helping us out a lot, and again, thank you. We have some neat items that we probably can't include because the space in the Erskine building where we're going to put it it's spacious enough for a time capsule, but it's not big enough to put a shovel. So we're not sure what we're going to do with the groundbreaking shovel. We'll probably see if the county wants that back. Otherwise, the Historical Society will put it in with their collection. There's big rolls of blueprints from the original courthouse. Reproductions of some of them are here, but there's a box full of blueprints from that, the Erskine building, a lot of different things. We're going to be going through those, scanning all those too, and then trying to preserve those and put them away so they don't need to get handled very often. If we have a digital copy, it's easier to zoom in and look at things close anyway. Let's see. We're going to try to get some more permanent scans of everything. We scanned all of this diligently one day here at the library. They have this great scanner that shoots from above, and Ross was putting things on. I was hitting the button to scan. Chris was taking them off, and we were just in this rotation. We thought it was going to be a day and a half, and it took us, an hour and a half, I think, to do the whole thing. It was awesome. But a few of the things don't really lay flat, so I've got to figure out how we're going to scan those, just those certain items, to get a better permanent scan of those before we reinter the time capsule. We are suggesting the date of Saturday, the 15th of June. That's during our History Days celebration. We are going to be displaying all the items that are in the time capsule and that we're going to be including in the time capsule at History Days. We have a reception the evening of the 14th with historic booths and stuff, and we'll be having a couple of tables there with everything out so people can go by and take a look and see what was in it and what's going to be in the time capsule. And then we'll put everything in there, and the next day, probably 3:30, we haven't picked a time yet, at the Erskine building, we'll be reinterring those items. And that will allow us to use the space that the county already has designated for that when they remodeled the Erskine. So yeah, if you walk in the main doors of the Erskine, there's the display cases on the left-hand side. There's looks like a little window with lead glass in it that's kind of between the display cases, and that's where the time capsule is going to go. So that should allow us plenty of space to put smaller items. Some of the questions, what kind of vessel are we going to use? So we're going to be looking for something that's archival safe, that will keep dust and bugs and things out. We're also hoping that we can seal with silicone around the window when it's put back in so that no bugs or anything can find their way in there. No dust can travel inside of the space. And we're going to try to make sure that all the individual items are in the proper sleeves and things to keep them from deteriorating any further. What to include? That's the real question here before us today. We're going to put in a beautiful medallion in there from the Arts Council. And we need feedback. We want to make sure that we're including things, maybe representing the business community. I don't know, maybe things that represent the school, reports from the different churches in town. We've talked about that a little bit. Business clubs, that kind of thing. Fraternal groups. Kind of like they did in the original time capsule. And we want to make a bigger deal than they did in the 60s. We don't want to just tuck it away and say, okay, it's hidden away. We're done with it. We want to make it a relevant representation of the community and our history. We aren't sure about the date just because we need to get that cleared still with the county commission. They authorized us to go ahead and do this project, but we need to go back to them now and say, this is the date we're looking at. So that date might change slightly. The only thing I've been thinking about, if we can't do it then, the 18th of June, which would be, Tuesday after that, is the anniversary of the original, the 130th anniversary of the original dedication. So if we can't do it on Saturday and we have to move it into the week for their purposes, we might look at the 18th, I'm thinking. The other thing is, when do we open it again? You know, we want to put a little plaque under there saying, you know, the time capsule's in there, not to be opened until. One of the things we talked about was that it was 70 years from the time they dedicated it in 1894 to when it was opened in 1964. And it's been 60 years, believe it or not, since that happened in 1964 to today. So we were thinking 70 years, 60 years, maybe we have them open it again in 50 years, you know, which would be 2074. That doesn't seem possible. These guys might be there, but the rest of us, I don't know about. Anyway, that's, you know, one of the questions we have. So if anybody has feedback, if anybody has comments, ideas of what we should be including, we'd really love to hear it. If anybody has questions about the actual time capsule or, you know, how we're preserving the items, we'd love to hear it. Any questions? Go ahead.
Say something on that. Were all of the pictures that Bob Davis took, weren't they to be included in there?
We
Remember
could include
he took
those.
all of them from around town?
Yeah, we could include those. I don't know. That's one of the things we have to figure out. Are we going to include prints? Now, color prints fade real quickly, so it would probably be black and white prints. Or are we going to put it on some kind of media? You know, and what kind of media? Because if we put it on a CD, those are already dated today. It's hard to even find a CD drive. So we were thinking a thumb drive, but who knows in 50 years what technology they're going to use. And it might be worth our while if we're using a thumb drive to actually put some kind of reader in there too that you can plug the thumb drive into so that they have some kind of way of accessing that stuff. That's one of the questions. If anybody has thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them, because who knows? You know, we look at the last 50 years and how technology has changed, and it's just accelerating. It's growing exponentially. So 50 years from now, what we're using today won't look anything like what technology they have. But the Bob Davis photos are a really great idea.
I think those were put in the Nolan Monument. I think we put those in the Nolan Monument. One thing I had a thought of with as far as the technology that I wondered about is if there would be some way that we could, if for some reason they see that the technology is getting outdated, if the could be open and technology swapped out at 25 years.
Yeah, and that's something we discussed too, is having a record of what's in there, having good scans, good photographs, and that sort of thing on a database, so that if we ever need to, we can transfer that to another.
Right, yeah.
You know, we don't want to, you know, we want it to be a surprise when they opened it, but at the same time, you need a certain amount of understanding of what's in there just so you know how to preserve it and how to use it in the future.
Do you think there should be anything in there about the historical events that are happening in our world at this time? Because they didn't do that in the original one, but we are certainly much more affected by what's happening now than they were back in 1894.
Yeah, one of the things we did talk about was possibly COVID, you know, and the reaction to COVID and what it caused our community, but also the larger societal issues that it brought around. But yeah, I mean, that's the question. What do you include? And the space is somewhat limited. So how do you include it? You know, do you put a newspaper clipping in there, or are you putting an image on a thumb drive? It's a lot. That's a heavy burden to bear, to be honest. So. Any other questions or thoughts? Anybody want to hear more about any of the items that were in there? Like I said, we also have a shovel, which will not fit. We're not cutting the handle off. We discussed that. It was in the vault at the courthouse.
Engraved on the shovel are names of the commissioners, county officials, deputies. It's kind of an interesting lineup.
64.
No, most of them.
Yeah, it was most of the people that were there in attendance at the groundbreaking.
It's labeled here 1964 Sturgis, South Dakota. So they
The gentleman who was the architect for the courthouse, again, I was doing some Google searches on through newspapers yesterday, and he actually won an award, an architectural award for the courthouse. So, yeah, and he had also designed just prior to that both the small elementary schools that were in town. He had designed the new Presbyterian church, and he had designed. There was something else, and my mind is going awry right now. But yeah, he had been designing things in town, and then he was selected to be the designer. He was actually out of Denver, but then was relocating and opened up a shop in Rapid City. So.
Yeah, thank you. The discovery of the time capsule was partially because of Judge Eckrich and his historical degree and interest. And when we found that, it was really apparent in the first couple of minutes what we had found, and so we closed it back up to not. I mean, everybody likes a present, but it shouldn't have been a present only for me or Judge Eckrich or whatnot. It was a community present. I would like to share a little bit about the event when we opened it at the courthouse building, because there was a lot of things on display. And you talked about the shovel that we have here. One of the interesting other items that was that I couldn't dispose of, obviously, was, there was prints for a railroad between Sturgis and Fort Pierre, and things that did not actually even happen. But I think one of the community items that is really important, and maybe at some point starts fitting into some of these actions, is there was a transcript of the Poker Alice trial. And anybody that attended that event can remember that Judge Eckrich, Bruce Hubbard, I believe Bob Havela, and some other people. They had a name. I think they were the courthouse players or something, and they did a reenactment of that trial, and it was pretty incredible, pretty unique, pretty neat. And maybe at some point there's some addition that we can build off of that. For me personally, there was only one person that I knew on the guest book from the 60s. That was Quinn Regan. He was just a young boy, but his parents had put his name in the guest book, and of course he attended, our opening, I guess, if you will, and he still works for the county in the sheriff's office. And it's been pretty exciting that the community has picked this up. When we found this, we had another time capsule project going. The Nolan Monument was in motion, and it was kind of hard to do another one real quickly. And of course, volunteer groups have life things that get in the way, and so we didn't do anything with it. And when Richard reached out to me to talk about it, that was a very good time to pick this up and move forward. And we, through luck, we came into these anniversaries for our community, for our county and whatnot. So this is pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to what these groups bring forward. So.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, and thanks for all your involvement in this project. It's been essential. It's a dumb luck, yeah. It's been the only way this has happened. So we're really excited about it. Like I said, it's a historical society and the Arts Council are going to be kind of partnering on this thing. Where the Historical Society has decided we're lending our full support behind it. There will be some items we'll need to purchase along the way, some things to protect everything that's in there, some archival safe sleeves to put all the letters in, that kind of thing, as well as the vessel that we end up buying. You can get vessels that you can seal, and they're meant for time capsules. So we're going to look into something like that. Question? Go ahead.
Just
just an aside and some comments. I remember being in the old courthouse many times, and the reason I was there is because of Pearl Hoyle. And she, I believe, at that time was the auditor. And Jack Hoyle went to the public school, and I was at the Catholic school. And we'd meet outside of Pearl Hoyle's office after school so we could get a ride home, because we both lived on the south end of town. And while we were waiting outside her office, we waited in some old chairs, big old chairs, I mean solid chairs. Well, would you believe that one of those chairs, or maybe two of them, are still here? Yes. And this would have been in about 1949. And in 1966, when I started teaching at Sturgis High School, they needed something to use during the homecoming situations, the coronation specifically. And so I was tasked with the project and found these old chairs and converted either one or two of them into the homecoming chairs, which are now still used for that purpose. I don't know whether they'd fit in a time capsule, however. And the other thing I wonder is Pearl Hoyle's name on that shovel.
I wouldn't doubt it. I know a lot of the newspaper articles I was looking up yesterday about the new courthouse being built and stuff. She was in all of it, where the county commission instructed her to take bids, where the county commission instructed her to arrange for tearing down the old courthouse, that sort of thing. I know one of the questions that comes up often is, why did they tear down the old courthouse? And it kind of affects our modern sensibility that you should save a beautiful old building like that. And we commend the county for doing that with the Erskine. I mean, it's beautiful in there, and it's a great use of a historic building. But it's our understanding, and this comes from Pearl Hoyle, that the building itself had severe cracking, and now we understand why, because of some of the stuff we saw in the video, that there was a lot of cracking, there was problems with the foundation, that sort of thing. So it would have been almost impossible for them to save it without basically tearing it down and putting it back together again. So it does hurt, though, to know that it was torn down.
Are you going to advertise so that people know that they need to be thinking about a time?
Yeah, we're going to do another story in the Pioneer. Some of you might have seen the one we already did when we were first looking at the items and getting ready for this activity. But we're going to be asking the community for ideas. We probably can't include every single thing that people bring. And again, some of it's probably going to be digitized and put in digital media of some fashion. I'm guessing a thumb drive at this point, and then we'll need a thumb drive reader of some kind that they might be able to use in the future. So who knows? They might just envision it in their head or something too. I don't know. Yeah, we know we're not putting it on floppy disk. So, there's just, again, technology is just crazy how it's been accelerating. But yeah, we're going to be asking the community for ideas. We're going to be reaching out to a lot of the community organizations and churches and those kind of things. Of course, there were 4 churches listed originally, and I think we could probably find that within a 2 to 3 block radius right now. So there's a lot more churches and organizations and stuff in the community that we can reach out to and get, their synopsis of their history or their current standing, whatever it is.
Just a short story about the courthouse. My stepdad, Jim Palmer, was deputy sheriff when Johnny Yeager was elected, and it would have been about in 55 or 56. And he lived in the basement in an apartment with his mother, and they had a little opening between the apartment and the jail cells where she would put the food through to feed the prisoners. And I was up there, it was probably on a weekend, but 10 or 11 years old. I went through every room in that courthouse on a weekend. I was up in the attic and courtroom and everywhere. Nothing was locked except for the front door, but I came in the back door with the deputy sheriff. So beautiful courtroom up there at that time. So.
Yeah, we've heard from some people who actually lived there when we were doing the original program and the thing at the courthouse to unveil all this stuff, that actually lived there with their family and that sort of thing. And it does mention in the one of the newspaper articles about the when they took possession of the new courthouse and they moved into it, that a family had moved into one of the spaces in the basement that was in charge of the jail. So apparently for a little while at least that still was occurring.
One of the things that just came to my mind was recording some oral history now of people like yourself that have memories of those things, because 10 years from now, we probably won't be here.
Right. And we can include video of this program and the original History at High Noon program. I think there's even video of the opening of the time capsule at the courthouse somewhere. It seems like that was recorded. We just have to find out where that is. But yeah, those would be items that we'd want to include. Give a little bit of narrative and some stories and that kind of thing. So, anything else?
First of all, it is one thing that we have talked about it, and I think he mentioned it quickly. We would love to get to church histories on the current churches in town. I think that would be a really nice thing to, and I think you're right. Businesses, there's businesses that certainly. So if you're in a church or have a business, or I was even thinking, Gallery 21. You're write it up and we'll put it in there. It's not there anymore, but it's been part of the history of our town. Speaking of videos, there would be the 2 from 2016 where we did the History at High Noon, and the opening of that is also on the library's YouTube channel. Yep. The Poker Owls trial is there as well. What I will do, I will make a playlist and I might share it with the Library, Historical Society, and the Arts Council. See if we can get that playlist on Facebook and get it out there. Let's see. And then there's some flyers back there for the Historical Society and the Arts Council. If you want interested in information on that, go back to that front page. There we go. When you look at the description that was in that article from William Graham's, if you look at the windows, you can see how the windows are different. So I'm going to have to go back and look at that description and kind of look at that picture and kind of evaluate maybe what the issues were. So another thing I'm noticing there, Kevin, there is actually a 3rd floor. Is that like dormers up there? Was that like even that in the front? Was that like, was the court vaulted up into that area, or that'd be interesting. Does anybody know that?
Do you know from having wandered through?
From having wandered through there?
Was there another floor above the court and everything, or was that a vaulted area?
In the attic up there?
Yeah.
The attic was huge, and it was wide open. There was just boxes stored up there. Now the rounded part, I'm not sure if that was. I think that's where the stairway was that went up.
Okay. I just, when you were talking about it, I was looking at that picture and it's like, there's something more on the blueprints that, at least on these blueprints, that.
The basement and the first 2 floors here.
Right. Yep. I thought that was interesting.
Through the blueprints and see if there's maybe a blueprint for an attic space.
I think it was probably in every room in the courthouse, 'cause nobody was bothering me.
Another thing we like to do is we like to thank those that are involved with the project. So here's a little, whoops, it's going to fall apart on me. That's for you.
Thank you.
and this is for you.
Thank you very much.
So, we'll, I think that's all I have. Well, I'll get it to you.
Is there anything, reason why the rally hasn't been mentioned as a history?
No, I think we talked about it a little bit when we first met, but it just hasn't been, we haven't put together a list yet. And I think the rally, yeah, absolutely. That would be something that it's definitely changed a little since the mid-1960s. So, and I remember selling belt buckles and pins for Dean in front of Gallery 21 in the 70s, and it's changed a lot since then. So, yeah, it's probably something we should be including extensively.
I think we need to keep in mind the focus, of course, up to this point has been the courthouse and the building of it and so on, not necessarily complete history of the town, but maybe that's something we need to consider.
You know, I know one thing that we included in with the other time capsule, the Nolan Monument time capsule, was I went ahead, I mean, we had space on the thumb drive. I dropped all of the history videos on there, because YouTube, who knows, where's YouTube going to be in 50 years? You know, we don't know. So there's you know, digitally we can drop a lot of stuff on there. You know, that I think would be, if we've got the space, we just as well fill it up, you know.
I would add too that, like to Ross's point, it's not the Sturgis, it's the whole county. So yeah, it would be nice to have county represented in there as well.
Well, that's exactly the point is, I mean, it is the county's time capsule. One of the benchmarks, I guess, that might be considered that has happened since the mid-60s is the newest municipality in the county is Somerset. Piedmont became a municipality, and maybe by the time you put it in the, probably not, but maybe by the time you return this, Blackhawk will also be a city of their own. So.
And Ellsworth, you know, I mean, we've got a lot of things we can include from the.
You know, you forget about Ellsworth.
Yeah.
It's in Meade County.
It's in Meade County, so it'd be nice to have some kind of little history of each of those as well. Good point. Good input. Anybody have anything else? Yeah, we have till June to do it. So if anybody's interested in being an active member of our committee, please let us know, because we can definitely use the help scattering around the community and asking for histories and that kind of thing. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody.